ODB started yelling that I was taking his soul, that he was going blind, that I was working for the CIA. He was extremely agitated. So I shot the Wu-Tang Clan on the 24th of April, 1997. It was at a studio and it was sort of booked in my diary at 8 p.m. They were promoting their album Wu-Tang Forever, which went on to be a sort of absolute classic. Shooting at that time of night, I must have arrived at the studio in darkness, and therefore I was sort of out of my comfort zone because I do like using available light. I'd got to that kind of realization that flash kills the atmosphere, which is something that Eve Arnold, a famous photographer, used to say. So in this instance, I was limited in the sense that I had to light all my pictures. I was also, which was very popular at the time in the music industry, shooting on film and then cross-processing it. Put simply, cross-processing is when you have color negative film and you put it through an E6 process, producing a transparency, or you have transparency film and you put it through a C41 process, thereby producing a negative. The benefits are increased contrast, more saturation, but the flip side of that is the pictures are quite grainy and you get cross curves, which is a situation where you have maybe a magenta highlight but green in the shadows, and they're quite tricky to deal with if you don't like the resulting color sort of balance. I'd been doing it since I was at college, at Plymouth College of Art and Design, and I accidentally put the film in the wrong developer. I guess now, if you want a weird look, you want wacky colors, Photoshop is available. After about an hour's wait, about 9 o'clock, the clan bowled in with a huge posse of women and a kind of bilious smoke in the air. They immediately went to the hi-fi that was in the studio and co-opted that. And so suddenly my photographic studio had been turned into a de facto nightclub. There was Method Man, You God, Mathematics, and Old Dirty Bastard. There are very few shoots that have the entirety of the Wu-Tang Clan because they were kind of a disparate kind of collective. The noise and chaos in the studio meant it was almost impossible to develop a rapport with any of the band or collectively try to establish intimacy. In situations like this, it's quite often the case that you're like a butterfly collector, sort of wandering around a meadow with your net, just desperately trying to capture something. For a few precious seconds, I caught a butterfly. I managed to corral the band in front of my ring flash, which was mounted on a tripod like this. I was behind it and it went off. Boof, boof, boof. Great bit of kit. They were attempting to cover their eyes because the light was so intense. After kind of your eyes are bombarded by the ring flash, your retinal cells get kind of overloaded and you end up seeing, like if you, any flash, but particularly a ring flash because you're looking directly at the flash, you see these sort of polo mints, and that seemed to sort of trigger something in Old Dirty Bastard, ODB. He was extremely agitated. ODB started yelling that I was taking his soul, that he was going blind, that I was working for the CIA and was some kind of undercover operative. The others wandered off as I assured him that I was just an English photographer and had no ties to the American Secret Service. I had my group shot, but I decided it would be smart to shoot them all individually. It's a good way of getting more material for the magazine. It's also a way of ensuring the pictures aren't ephemeral and dated, because you end up with photographs of individuals that may go on to do other things in a solo career, so the pictures will have a sort of life after the group shot. And it also mitigates a situation where quite often bands will gang up against the photographer. Sometimes bands like the photographer and you almost become part of the band, but often if they're kind of been touring for ages and they're traveling together, they have this kind of inner circle and you're not part of it, and they almost compete with each other to be mean to you or uncooperative. I set up a different background and put a single solo redhead tungsten light on a stand. This is the light I used. This is a redhead. It's about 800 to 1000 watts. Nowadays, kind of really an archaic relic of another era, because they were very hot, and nowadays lights are LEDs. So these have sort of remained in my attic and don't really get used very much. ODB calmed down. I assured him that it would just be a constant light source, no more flashes. And he just had one question. What about the bitches? We need the bitches in the pictures. I must admit, I did sort of think that was quite funny at the time, although I was definitely someone who was quite enlightened, and my daughter had just been born, and I guess I even might have referred to myself as a feminist, and I would never use that word. And it's also interesting to reflect on how times have changed. No one back then talked about toxic masculinity, and his girlfriend was only too happy to pose. I did sort of put her in sort of quite a dominant position in the photograph, so maybe that was me kind of trying to redress the balance. You try and get as much as you can, and we finished the shoot with me, again with my butterfly net, attempting to get some black and white pictures of the band, but ODB had wandered off by that stage, and Method Man was asleep on the studio floor. ODB died 7 years after my shoot in 2004. And in 2012, the FBI released a file about him, which had him connected with numerous murders and even a shootout with the NYPD. I guess the word bitch is still used by some rappers and probably Andrew Tate, but on the whole, we don't tend to use that word. I didn't use it back then, and I wouldn't use it now. I think we live in a more enlightened era. I think we care about people's feelings. We're more thoughtful about mental health. And I think, interestingly, it's worth considering the fact that in the years that followed the death of Russell Tyrone Jones, aka ODB, it was revealed that he was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia for most of his adult life. So all I'd like to say is RIP Russell.